Seeing his teacher in such a pitiful position, he raised his hand and signaled Brittany to stop. The frightening armor around her vanished, and the air seemed to return to normal. Everyone was panting, sucking air back into their lungs, like fish that were returning back into the water. He didn't expect to see Brittany's new abilities so soon, and wondered how this would affect things. Slowly getting back to her feet, Ha-Yun looked at Brittany and Han. Her hand continued to twitch to her weapon, but considering the consequences of that, her hand stayed a safe distance from the hilt of her sword. Looking like a rabbit that wanted to bolt, she started some basic breathing exercises to calm herself down. There seems to be more about you, E, aside from your spatial dimension and white uniform. Ha-Yun's left eye was twitching a little. I do not think I have ever faced such killing intent before. You said that she was your servant, not your bodyguard. She started to yell at him, but calmed herself down quickly. Looking as if this misunderstanding wasn't his fault, Han replied, "But she is my servant, specifically my personal attendant." What kind of personal attendant has the ability to cause this much mayhem? His teacher yelled at him, sweeping her hand at the people still recovering. The guards had recovered and were unsure how to proceed with this event. Not even several platoons would be able to go against your personal attendant, she snarled the last part out, dripping with sarcasm. If she's a personal attendant, then I'm a common farmer. I did not deceive you when I said that she was my servant. My father is very protective over me, so he had Brittany attend me at the academy. I did bring additional servants, the head of the protection unit and military commander. Some others will be joining me in the future, but this amount is nothing to become stressed about. Since I have never left my family's home, my father and mother became slightly overprotective. Han tried to casually explain to Ha-Yun. Wait for a second. You said the head of your bodyguards and military commander? What did you bring into this academy? Did you plan for an invasion of the city? She screamed. Both of her eyes were wide open and looked ready to pop out of their sockets. Han tried to make himself sound confused, like he lacked common sense. I would think that this would be appropriate for someone that comes to an academy on his own. I only brought those that were part of my contingent, not my family's. Considering this academy had those from nobility attending, I figured that this would not be so odd. Ha-Yun placed a hand over her face, looking exasperated. Yes, many noble families do not bring bodyguards and other servants, but none of them are able to take on an entire military force on their own, she said through gritted teeth. Just from your servant's killing intent, I was unable to defend myself. Do you think A-ranked adventurers grow as numerous as the grass? Teacher, we have arrived, one of Han's classmates called out. Ha-Yun looked at Han and whispered, "We are not finished with this." Han gently shook his head, as if thinking her reaction was unreasonable. He flicked a finger, making the tent disappear, and walked away from the other students. Brittany saw him and bowed her head, saying, "Master, forgive me for doing something unnecessary. When I saw that woman grab you, I could not hold myself back." Placing his hand on her head, Han whispered, "You did not do anything wrong, my beautiful servant. I was happy that you came and defended me so quickly." Placing his hand underneath her chin, he lifted it up and looked into her eyes. "You never have to apologize for looking after me. I am happy that the powers I bestowed upon you are working flawlessly. You looked magnificent in all your righteous fury." Seeing her mood improved, Han couldn't help but smile. "Now that everyone is here, we will be heading off to the forest. Even though everything looks peaceful, I do not want anyone relaxing their guard," his teacher called out to them. Han looked at the class walking ahead of him and saw that there was around 50 students. Each of them was dressed in various outfits, but looking as if they were ready to face the world. There seemed to be a pattern between the different students, where some wore outfits that freed their limbs, while others were wearing various degrees of armors. Some were even wearing plain outdoor outfits. When they arrived in the forest, Han would be able to watch how each of them fought against the monsters. The sun rose to its zenith when they reached the forest. Before entering, Ha-Yun turned around to face them. We were about ready to enter the forest. As part of completing the class, each one of you will need to gain experience in killing a monster. This forest is meant for novices who are starting out as adventurers, so do not be overall cautious. At the same time, this does not mean that you can be reckless. I will go over some basics before we continue. For those of you who are mages, I'll have you line up to my right. She pointed to where she wanted them to go and wait until all of them were standing in the designated area. Next, I want those who are fighters, not specializing in magic, to stand at my left. After people had moved over to where she indicated, she continued, and finally, I want those of you who are a mixture of the two to stand in front of me. Once everyone was divided into 3 groups, she stated, each one of you will be serving a purpose in this class trip. As a mage, you'll need to gain enough time to cast a spell, so the physical and mixed group will act as your shield. There are some monsters that are reliant on their speed, so those in the front will need to keep an eye out for them. Remember, having a mage in your group is very important because they are usually the ones that can deal out the most damage. This does not mean that mages are better, so I do not want you in thinking that you can use those fighting as fodder. In this world, there are a wide variety of monsters, so you need to be able to adapt to any given scenario. The 3 groups will begin by forming a party that has a good balance. When you have formed your group, you will come to me and I will approve the formation. Do not try to show off or act like you are superior, because this is how adventurers end up getting their groups killed. Ha-Yun looked at each student, trying to drive home her point. Once Ha-Yun clapped her hands, the students began looking for people to fill vacant spots. Most students that formed their groups the fastest were those with superior gears. Many of them were nobles and those from wealthy families. Han stayed off to the side, watching as people frantically found people to fill the vacant spots. After an hour passed by, all the groups were formed, except for one that only had 2 people. The incomplete group urgently looked for the one person that didn't have a group yet. Not wanting them to panic any longer, Han approached this group. When Han approached the 2, they looked at him with relief. The 2 were both girls that seemed to have similar features. Their outfits looked really plain, more like clothes they would have worn every day instead of adventuring. Seeing that Han was wearing a white outfit, the 2 of them looked hesitant about talking to him, though they needed him to complete their group. Look at those commoners in supposed S rank. They look like they will die in their first fight, the boy called Eric yelled out at them, laughing. Hearing what Eric said, the other 2 students laughed along, while their servants looked at Han's group with contempt. Instead of the servants that came to class, many of the nobles brought their bodyguards, likely former soldiers or adventurers. The 2 girls in Han's group hung their head in shame after other students began to point out to them. Do not listen to them, Han told them, hoping to encourage them. What are your names again? I am Han Yi, but you may call me Yi, he smiled. The older-looking girl looked at Han and said, I'm Celine, and this is my younger sister, Lithia. We came from a small village, so our family wasn't able to give us money for equipment. We didn't know that we would need any so soon, Celine said to Han in a quiet voice. Seeing that the teasing was affecting them, Han said, There's no need to worry about that. Everything will work out. What group were the 2 of you in? Celine looked at him and said, I'm part of the fighting group. My magic isn't very strong, but my dad taught me how to fight monsters that would attack our farm. I'm a mage, but I only know a couple of low healing spells, Lithia informed him, her voice sounding like she was afraid that Han would get angry at how weak she was. Bowing his head, Han said, I myself am a mixture of fighter and mage, so do not worry if your magic is weak right now. The whole point of this class is to develop our skills, right? Seeing his smile, the two sisters' expression brightened. They gave him a shy smile once they understood that he wouldn't think of them as rejects. Now that everyone is in a group, we will be proceeding into the forest. Since going all at once would defeat the purpose of this exercise, each group will be going one at a time. Before the end of today, all groups will reach the ruins and make their camps. This is not a competition, so I will not allow fighting amongst the groups. If you are not at the ruins by the time the sun sets, I want you to wait where you are, and I will come and get you. Each one of you has some ability, so trust your instincts, and you will reach the ruins. Their teacher called out to them. One by one, each of the groups entered into the forest. The forest was so thick that the groups seemed to vanish after walking 20 feet. When it was time for Han's group to enter the forest, Han started to walk towards the forest. He pretended not to see Ha-Yun's expression as he passed her by. Inside the forest, the daylight seemed to decrease substantially. There was enough sunlight to allow all of them to see clearly, but entering the forest felt like they were in another world. Bringing up the map to see where they were, Han saw 4 blinking lights for each of them. Zooming out, Han saw that there was a slight opening of the forest and the name Ruins of the Forest Kingdom on it. Though the forest continued to pass the ruins, he figured that this was where they needed to go. With a tap of his finger on the area marked ruins, Han set up a place marker to help him see where he needed to go. When he looked up, there was a large gold-colored orb hanging in front of him. When he turned his body, the orb moved out of his vision. Now that he was certain that the function was working properly, he turned back to the sisters. Since we are the last group to enter the forest, I think this is a good opportunity to get to know one another. What do you mean? Celine hesitantly asked him. Hearing this, Lithia hid behind her sister, worried that Han was going to do something to them. Shaking his head and chuckling, Han said, You do not need to be afraid. I just want to help the two of you out, so that you can gain the experience you need to protect each other. Looking at Celine, Han asked, What kind of weapons do you prefer to use? Thinking for a moment on what Han had asked her, Celine answered, I'm used to using the daggers my dad had on the farm. They were long daggers, so they were useful in attacking and defending. Lithia nodded her head, hearing her sister's answer. Placing his hand on his chin, Han stood there thinking for a moment. If you prefer using daggers, I think it may be good for you to also have light armor. Snapping his fingers, he made 2 plain-looking long daggers appear. He also created basic-looking armor, which only covered up a person's vital areas. Try these on. I'll now have you fight Brittany, my personal attendant. This will help me in seeing what your fighting style is like, and make any changes to your weapons and armor. The 2 sisters had a shocked expression on their face as seeing Han materialize equipment for them. Is this for me? Celine asked Han. No, this is just equipment to help me find the right ones for you, he said, chuckling at their expression. Where did these come from? Lithia asked. Do not worry about that. My family has plenty of equipment on hand, so do not feel guilty for accepting the equipment. Han tried to soothe them. Nodding her head, Celine began putting on the armor. Once she had tightened the various straps, she latched on the leather holsters for the long daggers. When she looked ready, Han said to Brittany, "I want you to fight against Celine, but be gentle considering her lack of experience. I want you to figure out the strengths and weaknesses of this girl and give me a report afterwards so I can create the most suitable equipment." "As you wish, Master," Brittany said to him. Han took a seat on a boulder and watched as Celine approached Brittany. With a flash of light, Brittany was covered in her paladin outfit while holding her bastard sword in front. Celine pulled out both of her daggers and held both of them so the blade was pointing down. Crouching like a spring, Celine launched herself towards Brittany. Looking at her calmly, Brittany waited until Celine was close to her before she swung her sword. Celine held out the two daggers in front of her and redirected the sword away from her. Once the sword struck the ground, Celine raced to Brittany's rear and spun the dagger in her right hand to use the dagger to attack the right side, while the other one was aiming for Brittany's throat, right below her left ear. Before both attacks reached their mark, Brittany rotated her body to the right, dodging both attacks. If Brittany had rotated her body to the left, she would still have been attacked by one of the daggers, likely into her neck. Using her right hand, Brittany swung her blade horizontally, trying to catch Celine off balance. When Celine had realized that both her attacks had missed, she rolled forward to neutralize Brittany's attack. Getting back to her feet, Celine held up both daggers in front of her, so she looked like some boxer getting ready for an attack. The two of them continued to trade attacks to the other, while the other continued to evade them. Brittany used the bastard sword to keep Celine away from her, while Celine tried to use each dagger to aim for a vital point. Initially, Celine was a little clumsy, but as time passed, she became more confident in her attacks. As Celine improved, Brittany increased the difficulty of her attacks based on Han's orders. While Brittany was still looking calm and relaxed, Celine was starting to look exhausted by the fight as it dragged on. All over Celine's body, there were cuts from Brittany's bastard sword. Though the cuts weren't deep, they were an indicator to how tired Celine was becoming. "Okay, the two of you can stop now," Han said, clapping his hands to signal the end of the fight. Hearing this, Celine plopped to the ground in exhaustion, sweat streaming down her face. Lithia rushed over to Celine and gave her a water skin, and Celine desperately drank the refreshing water. Both of them had brought a small pack with them, but Celine had taken hers off for the fight. Brittany had removed her armor and made her sword disappear, and patiently stood there. "Master, this girl has the potential to be a strong individual. Though her attacks are simplistic, she does have some natural skills, in addition to her high agility. She has an instinct when it comes to attacking her opponent's vital areas, and knows when she needs to retreat. If she didn't have this, I believe that she would have been killed several times over. With her level of dexterity and agility, I believe that a weapon that is both short range and long range would be best," Brittany reported to him. "Celine, do you have any magic skills?" he asked her. "I have some ability using lightning magic," Celine answered, sounding shy from her answer, as if it was embarrassing. Hearing that, Han figured out a weapon that would match her fighting ability. He made two daggers appear, one of them looking like a needle and the other being curved like a tooth, with a hook coming out in the middle of the blade. Handing them over to Celine, Han said, "These two are blades that I believe will fit you nicely. The needle dagger is helpful when aiming for vital points, especially if your opponent has armor on them. With the second one, the curving of the blade is good for carving up your opponents. Using the hooked blade is for when you attach the two daggers together." Han placed the two daggers together until there was an audible click. When he pulled them apart, there was a thin cord connecting the two. With the two daggers connected, you will be able to throw the dagger at your unsuspecting opponent. When you throw this hooked dagger past your opponent's head, you can pull it back and deeply cut them with the hook. The daggers and the cord are very conductive, so you can use your lightning magic to shock your opponent. To help you, the dagger has the ability to boost your lightning magic. Looking at her armor, Han said, "Concerning your armor, I do not think it is necessary to give you better ones until your skill improves." Han looked over at Lithia and said, "For your healing magic, I will be giving you a bracelet that increases the intensity of your spells, making them stronger." Opening his hand, he showed a thin bracelet that glittered. Handing over to Lithia, he watched as she put it on. When she closed the clasp, the bracelet appeared to no longer have a seam. It looked like a solid piece of metal on her wrist. If you ever need to take it off, it will respond to your feelings and unlock itself. The two girls looked at him with tears in their eyes and thanked Han profusely. "My sister and I are grateful for everything you've done for us, even though we had only met for a short time. I don't know how we can thank you, Yi." Placing a hand on top of their head, Han simply said, "The best way you can thank me is to become strong enough to pursue your dreams. We are a part of a team now, so I will try my best to help the two of you out. We should probably get moving so that we reach the ruins before nightfall." Seeing them agree with him, Han moved in the direction of the ruins, following the golden globe. Due to there not being a trail for them to follow, he had to go between the trees and through the occasional bush. All throughout the forest, there were fallen trees that lay across the ground and leaned against neighboring trees. Sometimes in the distance, they would hear the crashing of one of the trees that was leaning against another. When this noise was heard, the two girls would jump in fright.